Hey guys, this is Corge. This is going to be part 1 of 2 for an Elise guide. The patch is 3.14, so there's a lot of new things to the jungle. This is just basically going to go over runes masteries and some of the item builds I've been using in 3.14, and the next video will go more into just specific mechanics and how to gank and such as jungle Elise. For masteries, I've been generally running 21.9 unless I'm the only frontline my team has. These masteries are really offensive, but they'll make you do a ton of damage, especially with hybrid pen. The setup is pretty straightforward. It's easy to understand. You can switch the first tier, less attack speed for more cooldown reduction. It really just depends. But other than that, it's damage. It's AP, it's AD, it's a lot of damage. The thing I love the most is the devastating strikes. This is one of the main reasons I go down the offense tree. Armor pen and magic pen are really good on Elise. She has high base damages, which means if you have pen, you'll just destroy things early and even late. Scaling really hard with AP isn't what Elise needs to do. The 9 points in defense could be switched out for utility. Extra time on your buffs is very strong, but I usually want the extra tankiness for early ganking and fighting. It's extra HP, you take less damage from minions, it's really good, but utility can be used as well. For Elise I have a couple different rune pages. I'll use the same yellows and blues on the rune pages, but I use different quints and reds between them. First up is my hybrid pen page. This page is for fighting and ganking. It'll make your jungle clear a little bit slower because you were wasting armor pen and magic pen when you could have attack speed or AP or something to make your clear faster. But it will give you huge fighting power. You will do insane damage with this. It's hybrid pen, quints, and reds. This is probably the most common Elise page you'll see, and it's pretty much built for ganking. The move speed gives you better map mobility, and the magic pen just gives you a bit of extra burst. This is a pretty safe page to have. Most people won't have hybrid pen marks and quints. They're very expensive, and this page can be used on a lot of different champions, so it's a pretty staple page if you're going to be playing Elise. This page is more farming oriented. It doesn't give magic pen early, it doesn't give armor pen. There's no move speed, it's attack speed to help you clear the jungle, and AP for the same reason. I also have a couple magic resist per level in this page, just because I tend to farm more with it, so I don't have to worry about early action and dying to AP, because I have low value of my MR early. Elise has a pretty intricate skill set, especially because she has more abilities than most champions, so it's very important to understand the capabilities and what all of her abilities do before you play her. Elise's passive is basically her spiders. Whenever you're in spider form, they'll follow you around, and you'll get more of them as you level your ult up at 6, 11, and 16. To generate more spiders, you must cast spells in human form, and then go into spider form, and you will get the spiderlings. The spiderlings do damage, they gain attack speed from your W, and they can tank things like jungle creeps. Elise's Q in human form is a short-ranged nuke. It will do more damage, percentile based, on how much health they have left. If a target's at 100% HP, this ability will do much more damage than a target that is, say, 5% HP. Elise's W in human form basically shoots out a honing spider that will run at enemies, prioritizing champions, and explode on contact. If it doesn't hit anything, it will explode after a short duration. There's a lot of intricacies with this ability that you need to understand. If you press the W in human form and then go into spider form and lunge on someone, it will follow you the whole way and immediately explode, so you can really abuse that to hit your W when otherwise you couldn't. Her E in human form is pretty straightforward. It's the cocoon. It's a decently long-range skill shot stun, and it stuns for 1.5 seconds and also reveals them for the first second of the stun, so you can see them in Fog of War. As long as you hit the skill shot, it's extremely strong. Her ult is a little different from other ults. It's like Nidalee, it transforms you into a different form, giving you all new abilities. It also gives you passive movement speed when you're in spider form, so make sure when you're moving around the map you're in spider form to increase your speed. Once you transform into spider form, you'll be looking at all new abilities. Your Q will now be a short-ranged lunge nuke ability. It's a single target execute, which basically means the lower the target's health is, the more damage it'll do. A target at 5% will take much more damage from this ability than one at 100%, so it's the opposite of your Q. That's why good Elise players know to always open up with Q in human form, then switch over to spider form before using that Q. That way you can maximize your damage output. W is an active attack speed increaser. It will give you and your spiderlings attack speed, and also all the attacks will heal Elise for a percent based on her AP. This ability is really good early for sustaining in the jungle, and it also increases your clear time because of the attack speed. It's also worth noting that this is an attack speed animation reset. Every time you use this ability, you should auto-attack then immediately W, then you'll have a quick auto-attack. If you use this ability in the middle of an auto-attack, it'll interrupt the auto-attack, and this is really inefficient. Repel is your spider form E. It is the ability that makes Elise jump in the air. You can stay up there for a few seconds unless you choose an enemy target to jump down to. You can do it immediately. This ability is really good for ganking. It's a great gap closer. It's also really good for escapes. You can go over things like Wraith Pit, Dragon Pit, jump to Baron from the outside. You can really get away from sticky situations using this ability correctly. So now that we've done a lot of the pre-game things, I want to talk about in-game item builds with Elise. You'll pretty much always start with a Hunter's Machete, building it into eventually Spirit Stone and Spirit of the Ancient Golem. Spirit of the Ancient Golem was toned down a bit this patch, but I still see it as a very strong item. Tenacity plus all the HP it gives is actually just crazy, especially with the gold bonuses. You can go Spirit of the Spectral Wraith for a more offensive build, but I still stick with Ancient Golem because it's just so cost efficient. Because of how easy it is to ward early now, I find ganking less frequent, although of course I still do it as a jungler. But before, when I was snowballing or I felt very strong in my early game, I would buy something like a Doran's Blade. You can still do this for a really early power spike, but the item was toned down, and early fights don't happen nearly as much in my games because of how the jungle is working now. Once you have Ancient Golem and your tier 1 boots, you'll be looking at either getting something like a Haunting Guise, Armor Magic Resist, or finishing your boots. Your boot options are usually Tabi or Sorks. You obviously don't need Merc Treads if you have an Ancient Golem, and Mobility boots you don't really need, especially if you have Movement Speed Quints and your Spider Form speed. Although Sword Shoes are really strong because of the pen early, you don't always want to pick them up. It takes a good player to realize when they can go for straight up damage and when they need to get tankier. If you're just one-shottable, having Sword Shoes won't do anything. Ninja Tabi are really good against heavy AD teams because of the auto attack reduction and the armor they give early. Once you have your boots and your Ancient Golem, this is where your build path will go more towards what your team needs. For a really staple item, Locker the Iron Solari is just a basic tank utility item, but there's a lot of other items for damage and tanking that you can get instead that may be better in certain situations. If your team needs something like a frontline, items like Visage, Banshees, Randuin, Sunfire, they're all really strong, but you need to know when to get each one of them. Sunfire is really good for hybrid damage. If you have a lot of pen, it'll make your Sunfire do more. It also gives armor and health, so it's very good for tanking. It'll make you more of the bruiser type. But if your team needs just a sole frontline, Randuin's is better because it'll actually make you tankier than Sunfire. You'll just lose the damage. Between Banshees and Visage, Visage is probably better in general because of the cooldown reduction and healing. But if you're against heavy skill shots or just really hard to initiate, the Banshee's spell shield is actually really helpful and can be a better choice. If you're looking for more damage, definitely pick up Haunting Guise early. The HP coupled with the damage and pen will make you a monster early. You'll be able to dive people and do so much more damage than they could ever expect. After that, Rylai's is a really solid choice. AP health again, and it gives you great sticking power with the slow. You can constantly throw out abilities as Elise, and it lets you keep the slow up a lot. If you decide to go deeper into AP, you need to be careful. You're going to have to use your abilities really well mechanically to stay alive because you don't have those basic tank stats. But if you're looking for more damage, the next item you will probably want is Liandry's. It will amplify with your Rylai's because of the slow and do crazy damage. As Elise, as I said before, you don't want high AP values, you want Magic Pen. To become more bruiser with the AP, you can build things like Abyssal Scepter. The Magic Pen's helpful, and it gives MR. Same for Zhonya's. It gives AP, which still helps your damage, just Pen is more efficient. But it also gives the status effect, which is really strong for something like AP Elise, because you need to stay out of dodge. You're very squishy. With this new 3.14 patch, Smite's cooldown has been reduced so much that you can actually go and smite your first camp and have it for the second one. This means that smiteless leashes don't exist anymore, and you don't really have any reason to only start where your bot lane is. You'll get just as good of a leash from a top lane or a mid laner. This being said, when you're deciding where you want to start, it's really important to look at the lanes. As a jungler, you need to know where you can gank. You need to understand Elise's ability to gap close and stun, and look at the lanes. If a lane has a really strong escape, something like Zed's W, you may not want to gank that lane unless they're very far overextended. If the lane is really easy to gank, something like Heimerdinger, you're going to want to camp that lane, so make sure you're near it in your jungle route. Let's take this information into a real game. Let's say you're on blue side, the bottom left. If the enemy bottom lane is something like Tristana Janna, both of those champions are really hard to kill. Trist's jump is very annoying, and Janna has crazy good peels and a shield. I probably wouldn't want to go near that lane early. I'd probably start at my red buff, so I'd end up at my blue buff, and I could gank either mid or top. I don't want to be able to gank bottom because it's probably a waste of time until later in the game. While looking who to gank, you shouldn't only look at how hard the lane to kill is, you should look at your lane. I try to camp lanes, or at least gank for lanes that I know can carry. Something like Vayne, Ahri, Zed. These snowballers are really strong with a lot of gold, so getting them kills is really big, even if it costs you some time. To me, efficiency is the #1 factor in jungling. People who waste a lot of time doing nothing, like waiting for a gank to work that isn't going to work, tend to have a lot less gold than junglers who just farm, and gank when it's going to work. This style of jungling has become really popular in Season 3 and is one of the easiest ways to win in solo queue as a jungler. It is possible to cheese games with champions like Lee Sin or even Elise by ganking a ton early, but as you get higher in elos, it's much harder to gank people because they become more aware of things and they become better at predicting ganks. So if you can't just spam gank, you're going to need to learn when you can and how to make ganks work so that you can be farming in between ganks and becoming as strong as you possibly can be. That's going to be it for part 1, guys. I really hope that this portion of the guide helps you with a lot of the pre-game stuff for Elise. Runes, masteries, builds, things like that are what you want to know before you actually go into a real game as a champion. Next portion of the guide, I'll be showing more in-game mechanical plays, how to gank properly, and how to outplay your opponents using your skills to the fullest. So thanks for watching, and tune in next time, guys.